My name's Charlotte. I'm a survivor of domestic abuse. Today, I am breaking my silence.
Charlotte, your story is so extensive that there isn't one part of it that I want to miss out, but equally, I want you to tell your story in the safest way possible. So you can just start wherever.
I don't know a life that isn't abuse from a very young age. And it's what led me to end up with an abuser from the age of 15. I didn't know what healthy relationships were with friends, family, or with men. I met my abuser when I was 15, and I was with my abuser until 2 years ago, and I'm now 36, so I've had a long life of abuse. Healthy relationships to me don't exist. With friends, family, men, strangers, I see everybody as an abuser now. It takes a lot for me to accept that somebody's real. It takes a lot for me to feel safe in any aspect of my life now, especially being a mum. I've learned to keep my children safe, but I still don't know how to keep myself safe. I've abused myself a lot over the years because I've been abused a lot, so I then become an abuser to myself because it was in my control. Yeah, abuse just has never stopped for me.
It's a long time that you lived with it.
Yeah, a long time.
And from meeting the perpetrator at such a young age to being with them into adult years, I can't even begin to imagine the amount of abuse and violence that you suffered within that time.
Abuse for me has always been physical. From very early on, when I met my abuser, it was always physical. The only other time it wasn't physical for me was during my pregnancies. It was the only other time I was safe because he didn't believe that a child needed to be abused because they was innocent, and only people who answer back can be abused. I went from not being abused in my pregnancies to then using my children as human shields. It's shameful to admit I've done that a lot. I've held my babies in front of me to not be abused.
There's nothing shameful about that. Everything you did was out of survival.
Luckily, my children were never hurt in the process of that. But yeah, I've actively done that with my younger two, and I still did it up until not long before Christmas last year. I've still used them as a human shield because he would never have physically hurt them. But it got to the point where I wasn't sure of that abuse anymore, whether that would then turn onto the children. I did leave him 2 years ago, but the abuse didn't stop. It got worse, it got more violent, it got more intense for me, to the point where I questioned going back because I thought the abuse was better being with him than what it was not being with him. And it was a battle with myself because I only know abuse, so I have a extreme trauma bond with this person, and I didn't know a life without him, and therefore I didn't know a life without abuse. So when I wasn't being abused, I was abusing myself. And then when abusing myself wasn't enough, I felt like I wanted him to continue to abuse me because I didn't know what it felt like to be normal. That abusing myself, it continues still to today. I abuse myself now with surgery, I abuse myself with certain levels of self-harm, and that's continuing, and it did get worse. It's slowly calming down now. I've changed my appearance completely to what I used to look like, changed myself physically, because it's a form of abuse that I can control, because I'm not being abused by my abuser anymore. I still struggle now to accept I've been abused, because I don't like the label victim. I think the only victims in my story are my children, because they were innocent and they didn't ask to be brought into this world. sometimes I wake up and I think I've not been abused, this is not abuse. There's people out there that are worse than me. There's people out there that go through more than what could ever have gone through, and it's a journey with myself to accept there's no acceptance of any type of abuse, but I still don't think I'm worthy of moving on, because I feel like I've put my children through this abuse as well, and I feel like I should suffer the abuse because they've suffered. And if I'm suffering, they're not. But I definitely disassociate to life. If I don't want to think of it or I don't want to live it, I separate real life and I struggle to come back into reality. I do my normal role as mum, go to work, but I'm disassociated from life. I've disassociated from my children at points, my family. Haven't wanted the title mum, haven't wanted the title victim, haven't even wanted to be called Charlotte at some points, because Charlotte's just, who is she? She's somebody that's been abused. Yeah, disassociation is a real thing for me, and sometimes I disassociate back to my childhood because it was better than what I've been living.
It sounds so heavy listening to it, and I can't even imagine what it feels like to live it. How do you, or do you, look after yourself? How do you say, you know what, I need to put my mental health first, I need to put my recovery first?
I don't. I try to put my recovery first because I know, because I am a mum, my recovery needs to happen for my children as well as myself, but then again I'll disassociate from what I need and what I know I need to put that onto my children. But yeah, I just survive. I still survive now. The level of surviving that I have now is different because I'm not physically being abused, but the mental side is worse than the physical sometimes, because everybody knows bruises will heal. You know, the physical side will heal, but the mental side, with me, I do question whether it will ever heal or whether I'll just learn to live with it. I don't know whether I deserve to move on because of my own mistakes, and yeah, I don't know if I'm at that point. I don't know if I'll ever be at that point.
What do you feel like you need? What does Charlotte need to get to that point? Like in a completely ideal world, what would that be?
Charlotte needs everybody. I used to be so against therapy. I used to think if you go to therapy a week, that's a cultural thing that I've lived with in my life. And you're weak, you're a weak person. What do you need to go and talk to somebody else for? You're fine, just get on with it. Therapy for me, I have tried therapy before. It wasn't safe enough for me to do therapy. I do want to go back to therapy, but I don't know when or if I'll be ready to do that. But even that, it worries me, because where do you go? If I'm ready for therapy, I don't want to wait 3 years or 4 years or 5 years to not get that right therapy. And I also don't want to do counselling. I want to do I've got mental health diagnoses from my trauma, and even still now, I'm on a waiting list. I've been diagnosed with complex PTSD, and I still had no help for that. I've had no introduction to help to that. I can pay for it, which I have done in the past, and I pay for it. One of my children has psychological therapy for exactly the same thing, and I have to pay for it. It costs me a lot of money every week to send my daughter to therapy, and I'm lucky in my career and my job that I do that I can manage to do that for her. Put me into the mix of that, I'm going to struggle. It costs a lot of money, and I'd rather put it into my children at the minute. But yeah, therapy needs to be more accessible, and the wait lists are just ridiculous. And I think some people don't have a day in their life to get therapy, never mind 3 years. Some people, if they could get therapy, it would change or save their life. 4 years is a long time.
It is a long time, right? And especially when you have a diagnosis like complex PTSD, which I live with myself. What does that look, how does that present in your life, PTSD, in your everyday life?
PTSD can be from anywhere to completely blanking out. When I don't have my children, I blank out a lot, and I can go look at the time and realise it's been hours since I've actually been with it. I have extreme flashbacks, I have conscious flashbacks, I have unconscious flashbacks. My conscious flashbacks are where I'm aware what's going on but I can't stop it. Unconscious ones, I don't know it's happened until either somebody's told me or I can feel it after. And that consists for me of reliving an event. My flashbacks solely relive events, so if that event went on for 3 hours, I would relive it for 3 hours. Nothing can bring me out of it. I found my own coping mechanisms that don't work all the time, but that can be quite hard depending on the time of year it is, if I've got something going on at that time. Complex PTSD is something that you can't explain. It's because it changes every day. I don't have one day where I don't have a flashback, not one single day. Whether it be nighttime, daytime, I have flashbacks at work, which affects my work. And yeah, it's every day, and there's not been a day in the last 10 years where I haven't had a flashback.
And have you had any support from agencies like social services, or have been in court proceedings where other agencies have had to get involved and assist you in any way?
The word assist I'll use very lightly. Social services were involved in my life when the level of violence that was used on me on one occasion nearly took my life. And social services had no choice but to step in, because at this point I was away from all of my family, and they got presented with me being put in a coma with 2 children beside me in an ambulance. And social services, when I was medically okay, I had to fight for 2 years for my children not to be taken away from me, because I was punished for not keeping my children safe. And my children were placed on every register, child protection registers. It got to the point where they tried to take legal proceedings to remove my children from my care. And it was only because I removed my children from the country that they wasn't able to take my children, because they were very young, and had they have managed to take them, I would never have got my kids back, ever. I removed them from the country, and I fought the family court and social services. They've never assisted me in a way that I found helpful. They've only ever hindered me and blamed me, said I couldn't keep my children safe instead of fixing the problem, which was never me. In any report, I was never deemed a danger to my children. I had enough money to look after my children. I had a good job. It was solely on domestic violence, and the one thing I was given, which I was actually thankful for, was an IDVA. When I was given my IDVA, I wasn't really engaged with them, because I'd only ever had bad relationships with authorities, and the IDVA still now contacts me. She's obviously they're learning a lot more about what's going on with domestic violence now, and she was more helpful than anybody. They're about to sign out from me now, and I feel like once that IDVA's gone, I don't have any support at all.
And so I guess the fear is that what's going to happen to you now? What happens to your mental health? Well, who's going to support you now that it's no longer deemed a high-risk case?
Yeah, I mean, this is the problem. When you're deemed high risk, I'll always be deemed high risk, even if it was 10 years, if there was an incident, I would always be deemed high risk because of the level of violence that I've received. But yeah, once they sign out, they came in my life like a wrecking ball, caused me chaos as well, and now they're leaving, and I think, you've left me with this, on top of the problems that I've got, especially with my children. My children haven't even been offered support. I've had to pay for that. I've had to pay for my 5-year-old little girl to get the treatment that she needs and she deserves before she turns out an adult that nobody wants to be around. And I've had to pay for that. And I can't even begin to tell you how much it's cost me over the last 6 months for that, and I'll continue to pay for it because I won't have my child grow up like that.
Well, you're trying to break the cycle.
Yeah, right? I will break that cycle, and I don't care how much money it costs me, but it shouldn't be like that, because there's plenty of women, mums, carers that haven't got, luckily, a career like I do, and haven't got the means to financial means to be able to do this. And I think this is just one child. I've got 3 children. I've got myself, and it's everybody's going to sign out and leave now, and not one person has offered to say, well, we'll point you in this direction, or this charity can help, or this. And I just think, there's no support out there for me personally, because of the level I've been told. My level of abuse is so high, there basically is nobody to help me.
And so much responsibility has been placed on you, right? Keep kids safe. And it was your fault that you didn't keep the kids safe, and so many agencies involved. And at any point, was the perpetrator held accountable?
My perpetrator has never been made accountable for any of the abuse he's subjected anybody to in his life. This is why the words "I'm invincible" are big parts of my flashback, because this person is invincible to the law, to humans, to anybody that comes in this person's life. And this is why, because you've got a perpetrator and you've got a victim, and the victims are victim blamed, they're victim shamed. I feel like I've suffered all of the justice that he should have had on me, and there's been no justice towards him. And I've been through the proceedings multiple times for years, especially the last 2 years, and he's always walked free. He's always got away with what he's done, and it just because he's the perfect role model of what people like to see in the world. And on that side of him, he is the perfect role model. He does have this side of him where everybody wants to be him. He's got such a demeanour about himself. But this side of him, it doesn't get any justice, and he probably never will.
How does it make you feel knowing that you have to live with this feeling of injustice?
I'm numb to it now, if I'm honest. I've accepted that this is the way things are. I've accepted that he will walk around and never have justice for this. My justice for this, I've come to think, is when my children grow up and they live the lives that they deserve, and that will be my justice, because this person set out to destroy me and my beautiful little girls, and he won't do that. He's destroyed me, I'll accept that. He won't destroy my children, and my children will now live on, and that will be my justice. I don't think somebody could come to me tomorrow and say they've locked him up for the rest of his life. It wouldn't even touch upon what he deserves.
So even if he was punished for other crimes, it's not the crime that he committed against you?
No, even the crimes he's done that's committed against me, I don't feel valued in life anywhere. I never have. But I think, what is my life value then? What is what he's done to me? What would you class that as? What would you punish that as? Could you put an amount of money on it? Could you put an amount of years locked up for it? No. There isn't enough years left in his life for him to be punished. And my just way of it is, if speaking about it and coming forward, if it saves somebody else from being abused by him or by any other abuser, then that is my justice, and that will be the next person's justice, or whoever is around this human. And I say human lightly, but that will be my justice.
I really want to be able, with LPTMS, to offer therapy for women in this situation, right? What do you think you would need from therapy to recover? Because you're now in a position where you're safer and you can look towards that recovery. But what do you need from therapy?
That's a hard question, so I don't know. I need people to recognise that you've got pre-abuse, you've got active abuse. Nobody ever supports you after abuse. So you can, pre-abuse, you're fine. Active abuse, you can call the police, you can call authorities to help you. Afterwards, where is everybody? Like, where's the after help for this? Any type of therapy, counselling, psychological therapy, support with finances. People don't ever tell you the mess that you're left in after this abuse. There's nobody to go to for that. There's no therapist to talk to that's going to say, well, you can go in this direction or you can go in this direction. There's nobody there. And I just think without that, like you've said yourself, what is the point in these communities? Because we can all gather together, we can open up these cans of worms, we can all talk about it, but where do we go after? Like, nobody says we have these conversations. Nobody says that any one of us could go home and be triggered. Any one of us could go home and have a flashback. Where'd you go from there? Like, who do you talk to? Because the only person I talk to is myself crying in a pillow after a flashback. I don't have somebody to... I can talk to my family, I can talk to my friends, but realistically, then people are not trained. They're not psychologists, they're not doctors, they're not mental health people to be able to actively help you through this. And I just feel like, yeah, there needs I can't answer that question fully, but I just feel like there's lots of avenues that people need. People just think once the abuse stops, physically or emotionally, that's it. You can just pick yourself up and you can move along. And for some people, it isn't like that. I've picked myself up financially. I've picked myself up with my home. I've picked myself up in the physical things in my life. But in my head, will I ever pick myself up? I don't know. But if the support was there, maybe. But there isn't. And even when you pay for it, where do you go? Like, where do you even approach? Say, I'll pay for it. Where do I get the support?